This is Brandon Despia. Thank you so much for watching the channel and having conversations with me about Branded. I don't know about you all, but I'm very excited for February of next year when the new cards from Burst Protocol will finally arrive and make Branded Tier 1. So I wanted to make a quick video and show you several deck lists that you should be thinking about as you prepare for the new format. Let's talk about some of the ways the new branded cards actually make Branded not even just stronger, but more versatile. And I'll start off with a 40 card deck list and we'll increase the deck size up to 60. Here we have a very, pretty much what I consider what most branded lists are going to look like at 40. Albion the Shrouded Dragon is at 1. The reason being is that there isn't a need for as many copies anymore because we're able to replace those copies of Albion the Shrouded Dragon now with one-card starters. Not only is Fallen of the White Dragon a one-card starter, but now Incredible Ecclesia and even Starliege Seyfert is a one-card starter. A special shout out to this particular card. If you don't have any, I would suggest you get 3 right now. Not only is this a one-card starter to get you access into Fallen of the White Dragon that can bait hand traps before committing into the branded fusion line or the Fallen of the White Dragon line, but later on you can use its effect to return dark or light level 8 dragons back into your hand, which means you can use Albion the Shrouded Dragon to draw another card on other turns, or you can get the Bestial Lobelian back into your hand, in addition to recycling cards like Albion the Branded Dragon and Albion the Sanctifier Dragon, among other things. Especially for the larger deck lists, this is a mandatory 3 of. But for this one, I'm running 2 to keep it at 40. With the inclusion of 1-card starters, and by lowering the amount of 2-card starters that we need, now we have room for hand traps. In this build, you see 2 Ash Blossoms, 3 copies of Droll and Lockbird, and 3 copies of Mocharmy Foolas. But, depending on your preferences, you can even add more. For example, I can see more people dropping copies of Aluber the Jester of Despia, probably dropping it to 1, especially if they're going to maintain copies of Branded Opening, since Branded Opening essentially is a copy of Aluber, which I would consider if you're going to max out on Starliege Seyfert. I would be careful about the number of cards you take out for your copies of Aluber, because, well, you can at least use Branded Opening to special summon. And I would still keep Branded Openings in the deck because there is a use for its graveyard effect right now in this current meta. And when your normal summons get negated, for example, perhaps you get stuck with a Spriggan's Kid, or your Starliege Seyfert gets negated somehow, then at least you have another card that will allow you to special summon. And, and now Branded Opening is not your main starter, it's more of an extender. Speaking of extenders and ways you want to play your cards with the new branded support, Branded Opening is now relegated to something you play at the very end. Not something you normally want to play at the very beginning, as you don't want to lock yourself out prematurely. If there's a way for you to play Fall of the White Dragon or get access to it so you could potentially synchro summon, you want to do that first, because the way Branded will be played in February is that the synchro route is the priority number 1, with cards like Branded Fusion now relegated to something along the lines of, I want this card to go off on either my opponent's turn via Fusion Duplication, perhaps off of a Thrust activation, or on the crackback when I get my turn back by using Branded Fusion. The priority is to make sure we get Ecclesia of the Black Dragon online as soon as possible. But to finish off the rest of the deck list, we are running 1 copy of Incredible Ecclesia the Virtuous. This becomes more or less mandatory, as this is also a 1-card starter that can special summon itself if your opponent has monsters on the field more than you. So why not? You'll see in other builds that I will include additional copies of this card. The Golden Sword Soul is more of a flex spot. Some decks want it. Sometimes, depending on your list, you might not want it. It's basically a preference, but it does add an extra layer to your combos, and it's very good. You're going to be banishing a lot with Ecclesia of the Black Dragon, which gives you a free special summon of a monster like Incredible Ecclesia or Guiding Quem or even Cartesia, which you can use for value. So I run a copy of it. But if you don't want to, you can simply replace this with another hand trap. I don't see a problem with that. Another note to point out. Branded in High Spirits is now the priority spell you want to be searching for or using instead of Branded Fusion. Typically you did this before to help you dodge or play around cards like Ash Blossom when your Branded Fusion would potentially get negated. Now this is really the priority number one, because now you can get into your full combos and not worried about the limiting factors of Branded Fusion preventing you from using other types of extra deck monsters. Now, this does provide an interesting problem for your opponent. Do they use the Ash Blossom against your Branded Fusion, holding it until you eventually go into it before they realize it's too late and see you're going into a completely different line? Or do they use the Ash Blossom for the Branded in High Spirits? It's a really tough question they'll have to answer, and I don't think there's a perfect answer to that. We're running one Branded in red, no Branded in white in this build. There's no need for it. But we are not running Branded Lost. In fact, what we're doing is replacing it with Etude of the Branded. The Fall of the White Dragon line doesn't really go into Branded Lost, but because we want to prioritize access to Ecclesia of the Black Dragon, our Branded Fusion line, the Red Albion line, that will involve the Bestial Rebellion, we'll use this card to search for Etude of the Branded instead of Branded and Lost. That way, if you do get a chance to fuse with this card, you can still get Ecclesia of the Black Dragon on your opponent's turn by using its effect. And you might as well keep the Bestial Rebellion on the board and get a Floodgate out of it as well. The extra deck might get a little bit tighter, since we're going to be using a spot for Ecclesia, of course, and potentially a second one for another synchro monster. My bet is that most of you guys will be using Despia and Lilith, though there are other options that I will discuss shortly. 2 copies of the Fallen and the Virtuous, still an amazingly broken card that should definitely stay. No Foolish Burial, but we are running a copy of Gold Sarcophagus, since banishing the Tri-Brigade Mercurier now makes this a 1-card starter, as it will get us Fallen of the White Dragon. Secretarion Dragon and Starving Venom Fusion Dragon will be in the sideboard for this build in particular, just as super poly targets against the Mitsurugi board and against Draco Dale. And of course, good old Ido, the Supreme Magical Force. I'm going to be having this in the main and side in every build. I don't say it's mandatory to always go for this, but I always say that if it's legal, then you should run it in some shape or form. We just got finished dealing with an emergency ban list where people were going out of their way to run several different types of locks, and they're still going to try to do it whether you like it or not. So you should be prepared, mostly to do it back to them. Oh, and another thing, I want people to pay attention to Nadir's Servant again. Nadir's Servant is going to be very interesting once Ecclesia comes out, because what it does, it mitigates one of the weaknesses of this card. It's a great going first. It essentially is a 1-card lock. Even now, Nadir's Servant going into Fallen of the White Dragon can get you into the lock. I won't go into the combo here. Metagame GX does have a video available that will show you that. And I may leave a note underneath the video so you can see what I mean by that if you want the short version of it. But Nadir's Servant into Fallen of the White Dragon can get you into the lock. In addition, going second, which would make this card typically much worse to have in your hand, you can use Nadir's Servant to send Ecclesia of the Black Dragon to the graveyard Then you can go ahead, get Fallen of the White Dragon, use the effect of Fallen of the White Dragon to send another fusion monster to the graveyard, which will now allow Ecclesia of the Black Dragon's effect in the graveyard to shuffle cards on the field into the deck, along with itself and the fusion monster you just sent. So if there's a very important card that you need to remove, you can shuffle both of them. By the way, that effect is targeting, so make sure you're careful about that. Now let's move on to the 45 card build. As we increase the size of the deck, you'll notice that I'm adding more copies of Starlight Seyfert, and I'm starting to add a little bit more Bestials in the deck. Mr. Rookie is going to be around for a long time, so making sure you increase the Bestial count, especially if you love those hand traps, this will give you more room for them. Because we have additional 1-card starters because of the Fallen of the White Dragon, you'll begin to notice that the increase in deck size is going to not really matter in terms of your whether or not your deck is less consistent or not. And I think that's going to be one of the biggest strengths for the 60-card build for branded. You're gonna be able to run more copies of these 1-card starters, so it's gonna really be irrelevant how big you want to play the deck. It's just gonna be about your preferences at that point. On to the 50-card build. And this is when things start to change a little bit more. Now we're adding the Triple Tactics Thrust. We're adding Triple Tactics Talent again. We're adding double copies of Ecclesia. We do have double Quem and double Cartesia here, as well as double Seyfert. I could run 3 of this again, but I'm kind of balancing how many Ecclesias to how many Seyferts I want. Especially going second, I can normal summon the Seyfert, then special summon the Ecclesia. So being able to use these cards together as extenders to essentially equal Fall of the White Dragon is something I look forward to. We are still running 3 copies of Branded Opening, by the way. This is still a way to get to High Spirits, which will get you into Fallen of the White Dragon, so you can play, so you can continue playing. And just because, sometimes you may be put in situations, by the way, where you're not going to be able to, you're going to be fusion locked. This is still a good card to get to set up other things, like being able to get Fallen of the White Dragon, and being able to get Ecclesia to get Golden Sword Soul, and then using cards like Etude of the Branded, which you can search with cards like Aluber. And then setting that so you can make Ecclesia the Black Dragon on your opponent's turn. That's still valuable. That's still something you can do. Another point of emphasis I wanted to bring up was fusion deployment. You might be thinking, since I'm going to be using synchro monsters a lot more, I perhaps don't want to run a fusion deployment. And I think you still want to run it. It's still a very powerful card. Being able to go into Cartesia or Albaz at any point, especially going second, is going to be really strong. Early on, people are going to be holding their Ash Blossoms for Branded Fusion. So you can kind of take advantage of that to play other cards like Branded in High Spirits, Fusion Deployment, and set up something like a Etude of the Branded, like I said before, with cards like Aluber, the Jester of Despia, and then make this card on your opponent's turn. So, in this build, by the way, we are now using the Branded in White. We're now using the Branded in Lost. We have the room for it now, and we're even adding the fusion duplication, especially now since we have Triple Tactics Thrust. What you're probably going to want to do is put yourself in a position where you can still try to go into your synchro plays through the White Dragon. However, if your opponent activates hand traps, tries to get in the way of things, then use Triple Tactics Thrust to still set the fusion duplication, and then use cards like Albion the Shrouded Dragon, or discarding your Branded Fusion through cards like Branded Opening. Get it in the graveyard so you can play it on your opponent's turn. Another thing I wanted to note before we move on to the 60 card list is that I have several synchro monsters in my that I'm looking at right here that might see play. And what this represents is the fact that lots of decks will be trying to incorporate these cards in some way. For example, perhaps, and I'm just saying, maybe certain decks that can run water monsters will make and synchros will also want to make cards like Dragite. It's a water monster, and it gets negate if a water monster's in the graveyard. I wonder what deck that's really strong right now has access to water monsters that synergize with dragons and spellcasters. Just a thought. We know that Sword Soul will definitely be running Fallen of the White Dragon to extend their plays. There's also cards like Ancient Fairy Life Dragon, something that you would normally see in Blue Eyes. I see no reason why they wouldn't also run copies of Fallen of the White Dragon if they wanted to make a hybrid build that lets them go into synchro monsters. Their normal Blue Eyes plays get interrupted and they can't go any further. They can simply special summon Fallen of the White Dragon to continue and make something to continue extending. Maybe some older cards like Cyber/Harpy Lady. I'm just throwing out the idea that as we get more or we revisit level 8 synchros, there may be some unique builds or ways that people are going to try to operate this card in non-branded decks. For example, I can see a lot of decks having a very small package of just Fallen of the White Dragon, one copy of Ecclesia just to go into a quick synchro 8, and then because they have to send a monster to the graveyard from the extra deck, they simply just have a copy or two of Albion, the branded dragon. So they can run the Fallen, the Virtuous, for example, and I guess maybe Sky Striker builds may run that, or Runic builds may run something like this. Or if they don't want to run Albion, the branded dragon, then use Ecclesia of the Black Dragon to special summon this, get a credible Ecclesia, synchro into their generic level 8 synchro that they rely on in their particular build. And then later on, they can use Ecclesia of the Black Dragon to take a level 8 fusion monster in their graveyard or banishment and put that back in the deck while also disrupting their opponent. Remember, the level 8 monsters you're putting back into your extra deck is not albaz related fusion. It could be any level 8 fusion monster in graveyard or banish, which honestly means more than I could possibly describe in this video. There's probably ways to abuse this that I'm not even realizing yet, but I did want to point that out. Enigmaster Packbit is a level 8 synchro as well. When it's synchro summoned or sent to the graveyard, you can target one monster in your graveyard or one face-up monster your opponent controls, discard a card, and if you do, place that monster in the opponent's spell and trap zone as a continuous trap. Another generic synchro monster, Red Dragon Archfiend. If I do recall, there are going to be some new support coming for this card. Psyframe Lord Omega, or the upcoming 3 Brave Sword Souls, which you'll probably see in some branded deck lists, but I would wager that this will probably go more for the Sword Soul specific builds. But I do like its effect. At a level 4 or 8 spellcaster monster whose attack equal its defense from the deck to your hand, we have plenty of those. And then you can target a face-up card in the field and negate its effects. Then if you have a Fallen of Albaz or Ecclesia monster in your graveyard, you can destroy that card. This is something for more of your turn. So I can see something like that being used in a few builds. Not so much in the pure branded builds, although some will try. And now for the 60 card build. As you can see, I'm running 3 copies of Starlight Seyfried. I'm running full amount of Aluber the Jester of Despia, double Quem, got the Idol Lock, double Ecclesia. I'm pretty much maxing out on all the 1-card starters I can, including what I consider a 1-card starter, That Grass Looks Greener. And I said this before, but it's not just Fallen of the White Dragon that gives us a 1-card starter. It's up to 3 copies of Incredible Ecclesia the Virtuous, up to 3 copies of Starlight Seyfried, and Nadir Servant is slightly better going second now. With that being said, I would like to hear your thoughts. What do you think about the builds I showed you today? Any suggestions or thoughts? What is it making you think about when it comes to February? What are you most excited for Burst Protocol? And is there any level 8 synchros I haven't thought of that you think might be pretty interesting? So A 60 card deck with 22 1 to 1.5 card starters, what percentage do you think is the probability of opening 1 to 5 starters in a 60 card deck? Let's pull out the answer right now. That's very high probability. One could say that's almost too high. But that's really good. How many 1 card starters are in this build? 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's a 15 in a 40 card build. 91%, only slightly more than the 60 card build. And if you don't want that many, you could probably make it 13 and still have an 87% chance. Add more room for hand traps. And for the 50 card build, just for the heck of it, 18. So this is also a 90. So in all 3 of those builds I just showed you, there are approximately about 90% probability of getting 1 to 5 starters in a 40, 50, or 60 card deck. You could run this deck almost any way you want to now and not worry about lack of consistency. It's about to be Albaz's world, and we're just living in it at this point. So, I leave you with that. Let me know your thoughts. Which deck size will you be running when February rolls around and we get access to Burst Protocol? Also, no, I did not try adding the Tri-Brigade kit, the new Spriggans kit. I do think that is a good card, and it'll most likely be a brick in most people's builds, but I do believe, at least in the 60 card build, it's worth running. The 50 card build definitely as well, but definitely the 60 card because of that grass looks greener. Let me know in the comments what your thoughts are. I love hearing from you guys as we have more conversations about Branded. Thank you very much, and have a good day.